Well, for more, we're now joined by the federal Justice Minister Arif Virani. Minister, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So a lot to talk about today, beginning with your government's auto theft plan. Your government, as we said, held this news conference on a holiday Monday, but why the need to essentially re-announce measures that were already announced in the budget?
I think it's really important that Canadians understand the steps we've already taken and the steps that we are proposing to take, and also what is causing some of the delay. Some of the measures that we talked about include measures that deal with following the money. This has become a very big business, a very profitable business for organized crime, and we know that if you stop money laundering and you deter the ability to hide money, you can actually intervene and break up these large and very sophisticated criminal organizations. We put in place measures in the fall economic statement, and we've doubled down on additional measures in the budget, both of which are being actively obstructed by the Conservative Party of Canada. And I think Canadians need to know that, because when people talk tough about law and order and stopping crime, but they're actually impeding our legislation, it makes me question their actual sincerity.
Okay, makes you question their sincerity, but in terms of getting a government agenda put forward, then what type of timeline are you looking at here? Can you get measures actually passed before the summer break, which begins in about 5 weeks' time?
I think we absolutely can, and I think if parties cooperate on efforts to keep Canadians safe and to keep vehicles in people's driveways as opposed to being stolen and potentially for export around the planet, I think we can absolutely get these things done. So the fall economic statement needs to be passed. That's a confidence matter. We're putting all of our efforts behind it. We're also putting all of our efforts behind the budget. And what I would also say, Michael, is that we had an auto theft summit in February in this city of Ottawa, and literally months later we are presenting legislation. That's a pretty quick turnaround in terms of the pace that Ottawa works sometimes. But we are doing this because we understand the urgency. I understand the urgency. This is a crime that starts out small, it expands, it leads to large profitable measures for organized criminals who then use it to fuel other illegal activities such as drug trafficking, human trafficking, narcotics trafficking, weapons trafficking. That is a big problem, and we are tackling it on a number of fronts. We've also made investments at the border with CBSA. We've made investments in guns and gangs units with the Ontario and the Quebec police. These are paying dividends. We're seeing more interceptions of vehicles, but we will not stop until we bring the numbers down. And we're thankful that some of the numbers are starting to come down, but more needs to be done, and we need to work with pace. We're willing to do that. We want all parties to do that with us.
And as you say, very much tied to both the fall economic statement as well as the budget. So we'll watch that. But, while you're here, I also want to touch upon judicial appointments, because you did tweet earlier this month that you have now appointed over 100 judges since becoming minister last summer. 94% of vacancies is what you quoted in terms of now being filled. But what was the holdup? You've been in this job for less than half a year. You've been able to fill up 94% of vacancies. What was the holdup before? Why did we not see judicial appointments being made as really courts and criticism were being raised right across the country?
Well, what I can say to you is that since coming into office, and it's been 9 months now, since coming into office, what I tried to do is diagnose the problem as best I could. And I'll tell you some of the steps that I've taken. So we've ensured that the duration of an assessment of a candidate lasts for a longer amount of time, so they're eligible for a longer period if they've been assessed. Secondly, the committees that do that assessing sit for a longer period of time, so I'm not struggling to make sure that the committees aren't lapsing and I have to reappoint the members of the committees. Security checks, amazingly enough, obviously they need to be done, but the security check for a person who is a low-level clerk at the Halifax Port Authority was treated the exact same way as the security check for a Superior Court judge in Ontario or Quebec. I said that doesn't seem appropriate, and we've changed that, so now judicial candidates are bumped to the top of the security line. I've added to my staff, I've emphasized to my team how critical this is. I've worked in a dogged manner to get through as many appointments as possible, and we've now done 106 in my first 9 months, and the comparison to the previous government is that the Harper government used to do about 65 every 12 months. So the pace is literally twice as fast, but the work's not done. But I also want to emphasize that I will continue to work with pace, but secondly, that even if I had a magic wand and I was able to fill every vacancy tomorrow, I don't think you necessarily see backlogs immediately disappear. Backlogs are informed by a number of things: the need for more virtual trials, the need for more legal aid, the need for more court personnel, the need to adapt to the post-COVID world that we're living in. There's a lot of factors at play. I'm trying to work closely with provincial counterparts to try and address some of those features so that we can meet the needs of the justice system around the country and administer justice in an effective manner and an efficient manner, and that upholds and maintains people's confidence in our justice system.
Now, you do a comparison there with the Harper government, although a lot of the delays that were being noted was during the third term of a Trudeau government, a Trudeau administration. And, you know, in the last few months alone, we've seen charges stayed in 2 child sexual assault cases in Toronto Superior Court. And again, that's just an example. What does your government say to the victims and their families when justice was denied thanks to delays created by the lack of judges?
Again, what I would say is that, first of all, any situation where families are aggrieved and they're victims, they're hurting, my thoughts and sympathies go out to those families and to those victims. And people want to see justice delivered on a timely basis, and I'm doing my utmost to address exactly that. What I would also say is that people need to reflect upon what is causing the delays in the system. As I mentioned to you, I do not believe the delays are being solely caused by a lack of judges, but where they are being influenced by a lack of judges, I'm doing my utmost to fill those vacancies as fast as possible. The number of judicial vacancies is now touching around 4% around the country, and I'm tackling them in every jurisdiction where I find them, and I'm working with absolute pace on addressing this issue. What I would also say is that I will not stop in terms of addressing it. I'm working collaboratively with judicial partners at things like a court modernization committee, but also with people like my provincial analogs, such as the Provincial Attorney General in Ontario and in other provinces. That's really, really important, and what people should be assured of is my emphasis is to cure ourselves of vacancies as fast as possible and address them everywhere that we're seeing them.
Now, before you go, because we're quickly running out of time here, I do want to talk about your online harms bill. Certain online groups, as I'm sure you know, have called it Orwellian. They say that it will give police the power to arrest people for hate speech made in the past. It even got the attention of Elon Musk. So I'm wondering, when you see all that criticism right now and the speculation online, what does that say to you about the kind of discussions that still need to be had for people to actually understand what you're proposing with this law?
So I think a lot of conversations still need to be had. I think people need to look closely at the law and think about it and reflect on what's there. I'll just give you a few examples. Free speech in this country is protected. Hate speech is not free speech. Hate speech is not protected in the physical world in Canada. All we are proposing to do is translate that protection against hate speech that exists in the physical world and transfer it to the online world. That's the first point. The second point is that the definition of hatred that is being used is a very high one. The notion that somebody who's a stand-up comedian at Yuck Yucks is going to get rounded up by the police is simply absurd. Absurd. This does not cover offensive jokes. It doesn't cover comic material. It doesn't cover hurtful statements. It covers things that express detestation and vilification. So an off-color joke or racist humor is one thing. Calling for the extermination of a race is another thing. That's what triggers a concern about hatred. That definition is not my definition. It is a definition from the Supreme Court of Canada that should give people some sense of understanding about the objectivity of the situation. The fourth thing I would say to you is that I swear an oath that is unlike any other cabinet minister. I swear an oath to uphold the Constitution, including the Charter, including your freedom of expression. I take that very, very seriously. By way of an example, we are not the first mover in this kind of legislation. We're about the 6th or the 7th mover internationally. We've looked at all of these other international examples. We're not repeating their errors. In France, they went too far. Their law was struck down because it was overbroad and violated freedom of expression. We're not following the French example. Germany proposed a whole bunch of different types of content, and they said eliminate all of it within 24 hours. We're not following the German example either. The Brits put forward a law that talks about private communications, and they will wade into private communications. We are not doing that. Private communications are exempt from this bill. What we are saying is that there are 2 types of content that have no place in Canadian society: child sex material and revenge porn. I firmly believe that, and I think every Canadian firmly believes that. What we're trying to do is protect children, we're trying to protect adolescents, we're trying to protect adults, and that includes from hatred. And the notion that people believe that you might be rounded up by the police for simply posting something online that is a bit off color or a bit insensitive is simply false. That is not what this is about. This is about looking at a Supreme Court definition of hatred, applying that Supreme Court definition of hatred, and targeting people that would call for and propagate hatred against groups. That's an important distinction to be made, and it needs to be made over and over.
Minister Virani, thank you for this. I really appreciate the time this night.
Thank you.